on our YouTube platform and radio airwaves. We will bring your business beyond the borders and screens, grabbing the attention of prospective customers, eyes and ears, then finally their hands, as we compel and bring them to visit your business. But wait. Get this, we will also visit your business and create a captivating video feature about your offerings, which you get to keep. Expand your reach and connect with audiences with Business Beyond Borders. Find out more at 876-630-1210 and speak to a sales representative for more details. All this and more only on Nationwide 90 FM. The new revolution in media.
Champion. Our mission is love. Our vision is love. Jamaicans for justice. The people's champion. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, Jamaica demand. Right to life, right to liberty. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, the people demand. Right to life and security. Oh, what a joy. Oh, what a peace. How great this country could be. Respecting your rights. Respecting human rights.
Happy Monday, happy Monday. It's certainly a very good day to be here. My name is Michael Jackson, Executive Director of JFJ.
And I'm Jade Williams, Policy Research and Advocacy Manager at JFJ.
So welcome to all our listeners, those who are joining us via Radio Land, those on the YouTube platform for Nationwide, and those who are on JFJ's YouTube platform as well. Thank you so much for continuing to stay with us. Today's topic, we did say that we're going to have discussions as we near the general election on our right to vote and the electoral process, because I think sometimes when we look at these fundamental critical issues, we lump it up and say just politics that. And I think sometimes we don't recognize or appreciate that these discussions are fundamental to our governance structure. Yeah, I remember someone on Twitter asking, why is JFJ talking about reforming the cabinet? And just for those who may be wondering, this is a governance issue. It talks about the fundamental branch of government, which is our executive branch, and how that relationship navigates with the judicial branch and the legislature. Very, very important discussion. So let's not put our governance and our constitutional framework matters down to politics. And the language of politics, there is somehow partisan. No, these are fundamentally governance issues, and I hope we have these conversations about how we can enhance our governance. And we're going to be joined by Dr. Michael Whittle, who is research economist and sustainable development.
Research economist
Okay.
of sustainable development at the University of the West
Yes,
Indies.
thank you so much, Jade. And Clyde Williams, attorney at law. I just need to make this little correction here. Minor correction, but just important.
Yes.
Yeah? So over to you, Jade.
All right. So in line with our topic, we do have, or did you know for this week, and it's a little bit of historical context as to the structure of our government and how that has changed over time. So our executive would have gone through some changes since the 1940s. In 1944, we saw an executive council with 5 elected members, 3 officials, 2 nominees, and that would have been led by the British governor. So we were still under British rule at that time. 1953, we saw the council expanded to 8 ministers, and that created the chief minister role, which would have enhanced local control. And this would have also established the ministerial system, which would have granted elected representatives more responsibility for our internal affairs here, including the judiciary and the police, etc. In 1959 now, we would have seen the premier system, which would have granted nearly full internal self-governance, and then the cabinet would have taken charge of most of our government activities except for foreign trade and defense. And if you look at that last date, it's 1959, so you know that after that, in 1962, we would have gotten our independence.
Mm-hmm. That was period of West Indies Federation, the first and only referendum that we've had in Jamaica. Just a little bit of added did you know the first chief minister was Alexander Bustamante, and our first premier, as you're aware, is Norman Manley. Just a little bit of added context there in terms of the did you know as we learn our history and the process that we've gone through for constitutional reform and decolonization, severing the ties from the British monarch. All right, and that process continues.
Indeed. Thank you for that additional context as well. We do also have a trivia question for today. It's fairly simple, so I'm expecting a quick answer. But it is, what section of the Constitution establishes the cabinet? So what section of the Constitution establishes the cabinet? You can respond on our Instagram, or you can respond in the Nationwide YouTube chat, or via WhatsApp at 239-7583.
All right, so let's get right into the program because I know we want to have a fulsome discussion. So whatever things happened last week, we will touch on those towards the end. But I just wanted us to go fully into the discussion. So the cabinet, which falls within our executive branch of government, is the highest decision-making body. Remember, our Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Andrew Holness, as the Prime Minister, is our head of the executive branch of government, as head of government, so to speak.
Yes. The Constitution, as we currently has it, mandates that there should be a minimum of 11 cabinet members, but it does not specify a maximum, so there is no upper limit there. And this had led to questions as to whether or not we should be looking at an upper limit, or if these ministries, these bodies should be more clearly defined in the Constitution, because it doesn't list what they are.
So we know that we have ministers with portfolio: Minister of Health, Minister of Foreign Trade, Minister of National Security, but we also have the provision which is Minister without portfolio. For example, you may have Minister without portfolio with responsibility for something, Minister without portfolio with responsibility for X, so you do have that particular provision, and that also has sparked some debate whether or not we should eliminate that particular position altogether, or whether it's just a matter of streamlining the size of cabinet. Now, there is also another provision not in the cabinet, let's be very clear. So the cabinet consists of the ministers with portfolio responsibility and ministers without. But we also have state ministers, what you also call junior ministers. They do not sit within the cabinet, but again, they support full cabinet members. So, for example, Juliet Cuthbert Flynn, she is the Minister of State, now in Ministry of National Security. She was in Ministry of Health before. And we have Alando Terrilong. The question is, should that particular position also be eliminated as junior ministers, as we also call them?
All right. So, I think, I don't know if we have our guests on. Mr. Whittle. Okay. So Dr. Whittle. Yeah. Dr. Whittle is on. Dr. Whittle, welcome to Let's Talk Justice. Are you hearing us?
One of the other things we want to look at. Now, we are talking about the cabinet and by extension the executive branch of government, but it also has implications for how our legislature is designed. Where do we get these ministers from? We know that our ministers are from the lower house, your members of parliament. No less than 2, no more than 4 of our senators can also be appointed as ministers. So you have that kind of overlap, fusion of power between the executive and the legislature. And I think the language I've always used is that the executive branch, in some instances, usurp and undermine the power of the legislator, basically renders it impotent in some instances. Why do I say that? Cabinet have their discussions, cabinet make proposals, then they bring it to parliament, and in some instances you see where things just ram through parliament, and then of course you have the backbenchers.
Yes.
Always that sound, and then you don't hear a lot from them. I can hear the hand sound, whether it's fast-paced, rapid succession, and so on, but you don't hear the voices. That's another conversation for another day, though, and a recommendation that was made, Jade and listeners, by former Prime Minister Bruce Golding on expanding the standing orders so you hear a little bit more from the backbenchers, because again, we vote them in, we need to hear the voices and not just this. right?
I wonder if you're deafening our listeners with,
No,
with
no,
your
no,
bench
no, no, no,
tapping.
no. Once you follow Parliament, and most of the listeners are nationwide, they do.
Yes.
Them accustomed to
The noise.
right, quite accustomed to it. We have Dr. Rita on. We have Clyde Williams as well.
Yes, I think I'm hearing you now, Dr. Wito, if that was you.
Yes, this is me. This is me. I'm struggling with devices here because my computer went down, unfortunately. So I'm doing my best.
Thank you so much. And for those, I'm a student of politics, Dr. Witter, so I've seen you in documentary like Life and Death and so on. So it's a personal pleasure of mine to have you on our reader program. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm privileged, of course, to work with you guys. You're doing important work, and I am not a student of politics. I'm a student of I would say sustainable development from an economics discipline perspective.
Yes.
But I mean, I don't see any inconsistency.
All right. Just to start us out.
Yes.
Where do you stand, Dr. Witter, on this issue of the cabinet, its size, and just generally, your position and just the areas for reform as you see it, and then we start going into some finer details.
My problem is that there's a bigger issue, the issue of governance of the society. And governance always has to deal with what is the objective. I'm assuming if you're talking about sustainable development, then we have to deal with the whole apparatus of governance in the society. Conceptually, for me, the cabinet should deal with policy, public sector deal with implementation. What has happened in recent years, I think, going back several decades now, is that the political directorate has shifted more into a managerial role and less into their leadership of the society. There are good reasons and bad reasons for that. I mean, certainly the public sector needs as much strengthening as is necessary, and that is recognized. They're trying various things to do with that. We can argue about how successful they are. But what is clear is that the leadership in terms of policy formulation has fallen down pretty badly. Mm-hmm. And therefore, to me, that is the context in which I would discuss it. Now, I saw in the cabinet that you must have, at the transition into independence, you must have 11 cabinet members.
Yes.
I don't know what is the reason for that number, but let us say we have that number. Then the question is, how do you organize the policy formulation within the parameters of the number of cabinet spaces? Now, when I tried to do it, I could easily use just 11 cabinet ministers alone. I don't think we need more than that. However, again, it depends upon how the various policy leaders are coordinating their activities. So, for example, I could see a Ministry of Education and a Ministry of Health, but it would seem to me that both of them have to work so closely together that, in effect, they would have one broad policy direction, and that would translate into the interaction between the public sector, the administrators, the bureaucrats in each ministry, in such a way that it is more coordinated, that we move more towards a joined up government. I mean, in our system now, if I'm in education and you are in health, I can't really speak to you. I have to go to my PS, who will go to your PS, who will then go to you. That is a system that was designed by the colonialists to keep a colony from changing. Mm-hmm. We need a government system that is agile and flexible and pushes the country forward. So all I'm saying is that I think that the issue of the size of the cabinet has to be considered in terms of what role you see for the cabinet. I see it as primarily policy making, and that I don't think it can be discussed, or rather, I think it would be better to be discussed within the context of the broader capacity of governance, the reasons for governance, and the mechanisms for governance.
Thank you.
That's how I would see it.
Yeah, I want us to pick up on some elements of what you just said, because if we're talking about agility, why am I having a tongue-tied issue? The government being agile and flexible in how they are approaching governance, and the fact that you're going to be changing from time to time, should we have defined ministries or not? How do we define the size of the cabinet based on, funds and so on? So I just wanted us to pick up on some of those discussions when we return.
Yes, me get the last cheese. Tasty beef. Brothers and sisters, at the end of Easter service, we have cheese. Tasty beef. But one day we get no bun and cheese. Tasty beef. Sell me some bun and cheese. Tasty beef. Why, this looking nice with some tasty cheese. Tasty beef.
Could I have some cheese, please?
Tasty beef. Make we get on real bad with the tasty cheese, boy.
We have the rhythm and the tints for you all Easter.
Revamp your space with unique living, sleek fixed and sliding shower panels, shower systems and faucets, stylish vanities, LED and non-LED mirrors, basins and kitchen sinks, closet and storage solutions, hanging aids, and more. Available in different finishes and sizes to match your style. Transform your space and visit us today at shop number 6, 30 Dunrobin Avenue, Kingston 10. Call us at 876-755-3661 or visit our website at uniquelivingja.com to shop.
Big news! The Big Bite Food Safety Show now airs on Nationwide 90 FM with your host, Alison Richards, the food safety girl. Join Alison every Tuesday from 1 to 2 p.m. as she serves up expert advice, tips, and insights on everything food safety. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and remember, food safety is everybody's business. Don't miss a bite of the action. Tuesdays at 1 p.m. only on Nationwide 90 FM, the new revolution in media. Join us on our next episode for Fish Tales, keeping seafood safe this Lent.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Justice. We've been discussing reforming the Jamaican cabinet. We are joined by Dr. Michael Whitto, from the University of the West Indies, who's a lecturer on research economics in sustainable development. Dr. Whitto, thank you again for joining us. Before the break, you would have discussed your thoughts on the way our cabinet has been structured and the number of persons in that cabinet. And based on that perspective, we were wondering if you think it is necessary then for us to define those ministries in the Constitution and how that would look.
Your volume has gone down. I don't know if it's my instrument or not, but I think you are asking me if there's a way in which I would define those ministries.
Well, I think firstly, if you think it is necessary for us to define the ministries within the Constitution, and then yes, how would you do so if you think so?
Okay, well, just by way of correction, I'm now retired from the university, but it's always a privilege to be associated with the University of West Indies, okay?
For sure.
Let me say, no, I don't think it should be written down in Constitution or in law as to what the ministries are, because conditions change over time. Mm-hmm. For example, we now have a problem where if we are taking a sustainable development approach, many of our issues are connected. So there are many cross-cutting issues which don't fit naturally into any one portfolio definition. And one can see where over time these could change. I would have my own views as to what are the basic ones that we need. I could find a basic 11, yes. But who knows what 20 years from now will yield. I know 20 years ago, for example, or maybe a little longer, environment would not have been on the radar then. So, I wouldn't want to see it fixed in stone. I don't even care for the minimum number of 11, but if we have to have 11, I think we could easily fit the major responsibilities within 11 ministries. However, I would insist, or rather, I would encourage that there's cooperation, functional cooperation among those ministries, that they are not fiefdoms unto themselves operating in isolation. So, yes, I could name the 11, but I think any 11 that you name is going to depend upon what the goals of the government are. My goals would be sustainable development. In recent times, governments seem to be concerned about short-run macroeconomic stability as defined by the International Monetary Fund. That's a completely different thing.
The challenge, Dr. Whittle, is that we see where government and their priorities shift once, twice, thrice in their 5-year lifespan. And you see them across different ministries. So, for example, the last administration had a specific ministry for environment, where you're seeing that particular area now is simply a portfolio, not even portfolio, an area of responsibility by the Office of the Prime Minister. And then I look at it from a cost perspective as well, wherein we can change ministries. I believe even the Ministry of Education, if you look at how that has evolved, and even again during this 5-year life, you see where it's now Ministry of Skills and I think 4 other words. The name evades me. Not being facetious, I really didn't remember. Yeah. But when you look at it, the question is, what are the cost implications in some respect for website development and so on? I'm not sure. But the challenge is that when we have a plan, yes, we have to be flexible and agile. But I'm a little bit concerned about the frequency with which those plans seemingly change across administration and within an administration itself.
Well, I mean, plans will change because as priorities shift. So that is understandable. Is it costly? Yes, it's probably less costly now than it was years ago when, for instance, stationery had to be changed and all those kinds of things. So in the digital age, we should be able to be much more flexible. So it is costly to do that. I do think that there are some basic things that, don't change. For example, finance shouldn't change. Environment, in my view, should never change. Production should never change. But production, as I conceive of it, is a close relationship between agriculture and industry and commerce. Infrastructure cannot change. But what do you mean by infrastructure? For me, it would mean road, transportation, the utilities, energy, all of those things, that telecommunications, those things that come together.
Yes.
What we have now is that the road people will go along and they'll dig up the road and they'll cut the telecommunications cable and they'll cut the pipe for the water commission, and then we have another problem. Instead of everything being done together in a coherent fashion. So I could see where there are some basic things that need to be done, but there may be times, I think this may be one of those times, when some aspects of governance need particular attention. And in this day and age with environment and climate change, I think that has to be one. But then there are old ones. There's the one that you are organized around, human justice. In the broadest sense of justice, and ultimately going back to the fundamental inequalities, both in the economy and in the society.
Yes.
So I can see where, a government would say, well, for the first 2 years, we're paying attention to this, and the next 2 years, we're paying attention to that. I don't care for this capricious thing where you just create portfolios just to give jobs for the boys or girls, as the case may be. And then the opposite extreme now, where you have a ministry of the earth and the sky, where everything is under one person. That doesn't make any sense to me either.
Yeah.
So I would go for flexibility, but flexibility within some long-term parameters. So, for
Yes.
example, education is obviously something that I think should be always there. Now that the Americans are abandoning education, it remains to be seen whether those who follow what the Americans do are going to even pose such a ridiculous thing in our context. But we have to be prepared for anything in this day and age.
You know, you mentioned creating jobs for the boys and so on. And I remember years ago, and I just pulled it up, Dr. Whittle. Under the previous administration, Portia Simpson Miller, she was heavily criticized about the size of her cabinet, including herself. I believe the cabinet size at that time was 20. And that does not include, of course, the ministers of state. And our current cabinet, I believe it's what, 18 or 19, again, does not include ministers of state. So the size we mentioned before, but if you could walk us through what exactly you mean, and perhaps in having the discussion now about the ministers without portfolio with responsibility for something, what is your view on both size and that particular title, if you call it?
Well, there again, it's very important that you have my perspective to understand what I am thinking, right? My own view is that members of parliament must represent their constituencies. They should not be taken out of their constituencies and given jobs in Kingston that take them away from representing the interests of their constituents. In that context, then the issue of what is the structure of the cabinet will vary. I don't see why you need a junior. If, in my view, the minister is the policy leader. I don't see why you need a junior policy leader in any ministry. Or I don't see why any ministry's responsibilities should be divided up and you have a policy leader for one and a policy leader for another underneath the minister's own policy leadership. I don't see that. I see where the minister needs, every single minister needs to have a continuous dialogue with the informed constituents in the country. This thing where they think they know everything is just ridiculous. Nobody can know everything. The universities, the tertiary institutions, students in their training should be part of the advisors to the various ministries and so on. So if you take that kind of perspective, then you don't need a junior minister for environment. It doesn't make any sense to me. But if you're asking me about the way things are now, I cannot figure out what is going through the decision makers' heads, other than responding to internal political pressures to provide jobs for people who they see as going to become a minister or a leader of the party somewhere down the line. And therefore, this becomes some kind of an interim, position to train them to be minister.
And just to clarify for the listeners, that was in response to the junior ministers, state ministers. I had asked, though, Dr. Witt, about the ministers without portfolio, but I do take your point on principle.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
The ministers without portfolio are within a ministry.
Yes, the super ministry, as some would call it, over successive administrations, office of the prime minister. So you have minister without portfolio. What are they currently now? Minister without portfolio with responsibility for works.
Yeah,
That's Robert Nesta Morgan, and you have environment.
Yes,
that's Matthew
information
Samuda.
was there, but it was moved.
Yes, and that's with Dr. Dixon.
Yes.
And the recent one, I'm not sure if you heard the recent one that Ambassador Audrey Marks, she was appointed. Interestingly enough, the title, Dr. Witter, is efficiency. I think perhaps a similar version to Doge that the U.S. has to look at how efficient we are with our spend from public sector purse.
Yeah.
So I found that quite interesting, actually.
Yeah, well, I repeat, each minister needs a political leader in the sense of someone formulating planning and policy. And in that process, there is room for many, many voices, both physically present as well as in this day of the internet. There's no reason why somebody from Sablamar can't have a participation in a discussion about road construction or telecommunications. There must be a vehicle to allow other people's voices to participate in the policymaking process.
So participatory governance. I'm going to ask you to hold the thought, Dr. Witter, please. I will pick up after the break.
Okay.
At the Jamaica Customs Agency, we care for our employees, customers, stakeholders, citizens, and our country. Customs cares. The temperature by the Jamaica Customs Agency is
31 degrees Celsius here in Kingston, 29 out west in Montego Bay.
Coveside Concert Series presents Timeless. It happens on March 29 at Plantation Cove, St. Anne. Featuring international superstar Dionne Warwick and more stars, Myrna Hague, Queen Marcia Griffiths, and Dwayne Stevens. Timeless, March 29. Showtime is 8 p.m. and tickets are now available at Fesco, Fontana Pharmacy, Plantation Smokehouse, and online at coveside.aitix.com.
Looking for a gym that's got it all? Welcome to Express Fitness, where fitness meets convenience. With 24/7 access, you can work out whenever it suits you. And with island-wide locations, we're always close by anywhere and anytime. Love classes? We've got them. From aerobics to dance to spin, you name it, we've got it. Our certified trainers are here to take you on a journey. Call us at 888-FITNESS or visit our website at expressfitnessja.com. Express Fitness, your goal or mission.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Justice. We've been discussing Jamaica's cabinet and looking at some areas for potential reform. We're joined by Dr. Michael Witter. Before the break, Dr. Witter, you were finishing a point on this existence of ministers without portfolios. And yes, finish your thought on that for me.
Yeah, well, I think, apart from providing jobs for boys and girls, it also, I think, arises from the notion that the political directorate has some responsibility for managing the public sector, so that the day-to-day management of the various responsibilities within a particular portfolio. You gave some examples of, ministers without portfolio who have responsibilities, say for efficiency, say for works, say for the environment. I think it has to do with the notion that they should spend more time with actual management of the institutional infrastructure that implements those policies, rather than provide leadership. So, and this is where I'm suggesting that you pay attention to the context in which I am saying the things that I'm saying, namely that I think that at the ministerial level, the emphasis should be on leadership. And you find other ways of strengthening the public sector to provide for implementation of the plans and policies that come from leadership. So that would be my thinking on the ministers of portfolio and the parliamentary secretaries and all of these lesser functions within the ministry, that maybe they're not so necessary. This is not to say that their voices are not important, but that the roles may not be so necessary in a restructured cabinet.
Yes. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Witter, because, it's, I remember a few years ago, the ministers without portfolio, Those scenarios were described sometimes as a retirement lounge as well in previous administration. So yes, there have been criticisms over the years. So clearly room for reform necessary. To segue into another bit of the conversation, Dr. Witt, I'm not sure if you have any thought on this. We see the overlap between the executive branch and the legislature because our cabinet members come from both lower and upper house. And we've seen in some instances wherein, I'm not sure to whom they're loyal, where the loyalties lie, so to speak, of the legislator in some instance. Are they voting on issues because it's in the best interest of their constituents? Or are they merely knocking the benches, as I was alluding to earlier? Because the executive branch, the cabinet, they come, they put forward their proposals. The head of the cabinet, the prime minister, is there. In one Caribbean island, I remember a bill was being passed and the prime minister was looking on the other side, basically saying you better vote accordingly. Not Jamaica, no, let me not call that country's name, but it's not Jamaica. So, I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts, Dr. Witter, on how and whether or not we should have some separation between the legislator and the executive, as you see in, the presidential system in some instances.
No, I'm strongly in favor of that. I'm strongly in favor of that separation. I think representation has suffered as a result of it, and it really plays into the pork barrel nature of the politics. Because you see, if the member of parliament is in the cabinet or close to the cabinet, it gives that constituency a better chance at participating in whatever largesse, whatever pork barrel, whatever expenditure, to put it bluntly, whatever expenditure is going to be made in the constituency. So if you have a road program and there's a road program that the government announces, and my representative in my constituency is not in the cabinet or close to the cabinet, the chances of the roads in my constituency being fixed are not as great as the chances are for someone whose representative is in the cabinet. So I think it is tied in with the way in which governance decisions are made. My view is that there is much greater need for representation of the needs of the particular constituency than there is for them to participate in governance. And so I would certainly advocate, if there is any kind of a change in the Constitution, that that separation be done as it is done in presidential systems. Now, I don't know that that is even close to being on the agenda now, so I didn't raise it that way. But I think that there are ways in which, for example, a party leader could insist that those who represent his or her party should meet once or twice a year with the constituents in a structured way in which the interests of the constituents are defined, strategies developed, and that pass through the system ultimately into the parliament. So there are ways in which the government, I think, as it is now, if it wished, could strengthen the representational role of the population.
Dr. Witter, as you said that, without going into the Portmore debate at all, because we don't have a position here at JFT. I don't want to be misunderstood by the listeners. Not that we don't have a position, we don't have a public position that we will be sharing. Let me reframe as well. But as you made that statement, I recall listening to colleagues here on this station about the Portmore debate. And one of the commentary was that it was in a manifesto by the government. And I said, absolutely, it was. And people voted for the government. But that's another conversation about the first past the post system. But the manifestos, Dr. Witter, they are published what? They're beautifully designed documents from both political parties. But they are published what? A week or so before a general election. So have we really done that participatory governance that you have articulated with that, or are you suggesting something more comprehensive, timely, as you said, once per year rather than once every 5 years when you're looking a vote? Just to clarify for the listeners.
Well, the party platform that is published just before election is basically what the marketing people think that people will vote for. It doesn't have anything necessarily to do with what the real needs of the population are, of the population as a whole, and of certainly of the various constituents. It's just something that looks pretty and it's used as a marketing device. And as you know, the next day after the election, it is forgotten completely.
I mean, to be fair to some of the political parties, Dr. Witt, they may say that they have thoroughly researched their proposals and they're proposing them in the manifestos.
Well, they can say that, but I've been around long enough to know that there isn't very much thorough research that is done. And even if it is so, even if one could say that the marketer has come along and picked up what the various representatives think is happening in the country and put together in a nice, pretty document, that's fine. But, you know, I think representation is dynamic. One would need, for example, in each constituency, some long-run trajectory, some long-run plan. But at times, things change on a regular basis. I live in St. Anne, for instance, and it is there's an anarchic development going on the North Coast right now. And all of a sudden, there is a traffic congestion. So now they're going to widen the road. You can't plan the development to benefit people with this kind of reaction to things that come without a perspective.
Yes.
And I would love to know if there is any agency in the government of Jamaica, whether central or local, that has any idea of the development that is going on in an area like St. Anne. And that would be true for everywhere else.
Yes.
So
it's not a presentation of idea. It's having ongoing active discussions with citizens, and we share our ideas and they respond accordingly.
Exactly. And people at least get to know, I mean, presumably those who lead us would have access to more information. So I, as a citizen, would come up and say, look, I need a new road here. But somebody who has more information might show me what the other options are. And I would be willing to say, okay, let's put off the road this year in the next 5 years. And while we do whatever is supposed to be more important. But this dialogue is necessary, I think, in order for good governance. And unfortunately, given the way our system is now, I don't know if you have ever been into a constituency with a member of parliament, but it's not a very two-way process, It is Busher come and handing out goodies, and that's not appropriate, I think, for sustainable development. And that is my ideological perspective, sustainable development.
Yes. Before you go, Dr. Witter, just to indicate that the constitutional reform process, I'm not sure if you remember the language in it, but the Republic Bill, it actually very clearly says that the cabinet structure will be retained. So in other words, from what I gather, Dr. Witter, it doesn't seem as if we're going to be having any real electoral or governance reform to our branches of governance and how they are structured and operated, which is fundamentally disappointing in our humble opinion here. I'm not sure your thoughts on that as you close out and any appeal that you would have to the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs.
Well, from what I understand, there is very, very little for discussion in these proposed changes that are there. The government has decided on a limited range of changes, and it's not open for discussion. What we are going to be faced with is gathered in formal meetings in which we are told what the changes are going to be, and they are going to be nibbling at the edges. There's nothing fundamental about the changes that have been suggested. I could have missed it, but that certainly is my impression.
Yeah, agreed. So we have quite a bit, Dr. Witter, because these are things that we've been discussing for decades. I've read in the political history books. And again, disappointingly so, it doesn't seem as if it's going to be on the reform agenda. Because if a bill, as I stated, is going to be passed, that says that the cabinet structure is going to be retained again, it suggests that it's closing the doors to any such recommendations. But yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Witter. Really enjoyed having you on the program. And I hope we can talk again.
Okay, and thanks for the opportunity. Keep up the good work.
Yes, have a good day. That was Dr. Michael Witter, research economist of sustainable development, retired lecturer by the University of the West Indies. Yes. We take the break and we return.
Hey there, commuters, big news! Your JUTC Smart Fare cards are here! It's time to swap out those old Smarter cards and step into the future of easy, efficient travel. We know transitions take time, but let's get started. Here's how. Grab your Smarter card and your ID. Bring it to any JUTC ticket office. We will then switch you to a Smart Fare card. Top up and voila! Your brand new Smart Fare card is ready to roll. No stress, your balance moves with you to your sleek, upgraded Smart Fare card. So, out with the old, in with the new. Right, with Smart Fare.
Calling all tradesmen, small contractors, skilled workmen, and small entrepreneurs. Whether you want to start or expand your business or get equipment for your projects, Total Tools will help you tool up and expand your business. Get up to $500,000 to borrow, up to 2 years to repay, and interest rates as low as 3.99%. Come for your loan to get your tools. Offer ends June 2025. Visit Total Tools in Kingston, Ocho Rios, and Drex Hall to get a loan for every tool and every trade.
Big news! The Big Bite Food Safety Show now airs on Nationwide 90 FM with your host, Alison Richards, the Food Safety Girl. Join Alison every Tuesday from 1 to 2 p.m. as she serves up expert advice, tips, and insights on everything food safety. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and remember, food safety is everybody's business. Don't miss a bite of the action. Tuesdays at 1 p.m. only on Nationwide 90 FM, the new revolution in media. Join us on our next episode for Fish Tales, keeping seafood safe this Lent.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Justice. I see a comment here, Jade, from News Commentator, that a cost analysis should be done to see the cost of taxpayers for all these changes, because both political parties are always trying to outdo the other. You know, to our listeners, just to say, we shared a comprehensive document on JFJ's proposals for constitutional reform. You can find it in what that thing is called, Jade.
It's called Linktree, but if you are on our social medias, you see a link at the top of our page. Once you click it, you can scroll down and you'll be able to access that document.
It's a comprehensive document that looks at changes in the executive branch, the relationship between the executive branch and the legislator. And we have articulated that we should have full separation between the legislator and the executive branch, because we need to get to a stage wherein we have more robust discussions on matters rather than laws being passed according and in line with political party preferences. I think we need to minimize that as much. People may be listening on and say, but you still have people passing laws along party lines, even with a separation. In our humble opinion, we think it will be minimized a bit, because you're going to be having the ministers now who are not seated in the legislature. It means that almost, that impetus that you may have to just simply pass a bill to say because the JLP or the PNP, tabled it, you are so obligated. So I think that separation for greater accountability, because it should be the legislator that has accountability for the executive branch, not the other way around. And that is what we have seen. So that is a proposal that we made. JFJ also made a proposal to have an upper limit for the cabinet, because far too often you see, again, these enlarged ministries, or cabinet size rather. I think we need to have that upper limit. We made the recommendation that some ministries should be defined, because even if you have the need, and you will have the need for flexibility, a lot of that flexibility will be so seen perhaps in working committees, technical groups, interministerial groups. It doesn't necessarily mean that the name of the ministry itself ought to change or ought to be established. Because sometimes if you look at the genesis, the reason and justification for some of these changes, you question and question the government as to why. Is this because of party loyalty or otherwise? And in recent times, we have seen where people don't get their ways with the seat selections in their constituencies. And then you see some appointment being made somewhere. And I think we have to start questioning those things, because guess what? This is a fundamental governance issue. And I think we have to be a little bit more probing as citizens as we hold our governments accountable.
Yeah, I think especially the proposal to have an upper limit, I think kind of goes to some of what Dr. Witter was saying in terms of a level of prioritizing our policy directives. And I think having that upper limit would kind of force us, even as our needs evolve and change.
You can't exceed this number, so therefore you must
So how would we make this more efficient in order to ensure that this additional consideration is met? So I think that is an absolute necessity. I think we move a little bit too fast when, again, consultation is necessary. I think we move a little bit too fast when we're making these decisions. Not to say that there isn't need for additional support to get certain things done. But if you look at, a portfolio like efficiency, innovation, and digital transformation, and then also look at a Ministry of Science, Technology, and I think efficiency is in that name as well.
No, it's not in the name, but that's headed by Daryl Vaz.
Yes, yeah. And you look at an entire ministry for that, which would have started the process for the needs, and then now the needs is under a new Ministry of Information. It's kind of looking like
this is under OPM, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of looking like not only a duplication of efforts, but a duplication that may make these efforts less efficient as you are moving these portfolios from different areas, expanding them in different ways. How would we see oversight of all of these different things when they're under three different portfolio ministries, whatever?
Yeah, and then you start questioning what are the key performance indicators. Again, you have the Ministry of Economic Growth. What are the key performance indicators that will necessitate another ministry with some elements of that being recreated? So, again, this is a discussion I've personally heard. I think the loudest for me in my recollection, Jade, was during Portia Simpson Miller's time. It was 20. And I remember the criticisms were quite loud there. Why do you have so many members, and how do you hold them accountable? And what exactly are you asking them to do? Is it duplicating efforts? I look at the value of some things as I personally have these conversations. The minister without portfolio, is that responding to new and emerging issues? Should we abolish it completely? If we say that things perhaps, you need to be responsive to change and new dynamics, perhaps. But again, it should be limited in number. Ministers of state, I'm not sure such a position is important, given you have ministry with technical people. Because again, you start asking the question, yes, you want to train people. Yes, there are some ministries that are so awesome that you may need some added support. Should that added support be from the political directorate or from technical people with the capacity? So I trust that we will be looking at these things because we have our constitutional reform process that is going on. And beyond getting rid of the monarchy or abolishing the monarchy, we should start by looking at fundamental changes that have a governance structure that works for us, respect our taxpayers' money. Very, very important because, again, governance is not a partisan issue. Yeah?
Yeah. All right. So I think I'll just mention one thing in the week that was. We would have seen an announcement from Minister of National Security, Dr. Horace Chang, on the transition, something that JFJ has been inquiring about, the transition of those children who would have previously been considered uncontrollable under Section 24 of the Child Care and Protection Act, who would no longer be, right? Because that section would have been repealed and replaced with something completely different. What we're seeing from the Ministry of National Security is that the intention is now to separate these children from the general population of correctional inmates. And the indication was that a separate facility for these children has not yet been developed.
I guess we should start from a place, Jade, of perhaps informing the listeners that last year we wrote to the Minister of State within the Ministry of National Security, Juliet Cuthbert Flynn, and we wrote to then Minister of Education, Favour Williams, to make these inquiries that you're making reference to. Know that the provision has been repealed. What of these children? Because you still have children detained. Incarcerated, which is the language. Incarcerated.
Yes, yeah? Incarcerated, yes.
Under a no repealed provision. And we offered our services to have these children, have a court review their matter to see if the orders could be lifted so that based on their own unique circumstances, they could perhaps be returned home and get certain interventions for the family themselves, again, based on the situation. We did not get a response from the then Minister of Education, Favour Williams, but we had gotten a response from Juliet Cuthbert Flynn, quite a good response, quite willing to work with us to say that there was this transition home, not transition, a home.
A rehabilitation facility that would have been finalized, that the area was identified and that it would be finalized.
Yes, that was last year.
Yes.
We sent some follow-up letters since here asking about it to the new Minister of Education, Dr. Dana Dixon, and she responded to say that this facility will be built. I think it's concerning, though, that we're getting the update that it will be done, The question is, what is the status of the children now?
Yes.
Because if we acknowledge that some of the offenses for which these children were incarcerated,
be frank, they were not offenses. They would have been incarcerated on the basis of being uncontrollable, which was just, this correctional order was just one of the orders that could have been given in this state.
So in and of itself, it wasn't even an offense per se.
Exactly.
So, the question is, what of these children know and what should be done now? And whether or not a facility should be built. Should all these children be placed in that facility? Or should we utilize existing social intervention programs and have those children, again, a court order issued to lift the previous, and the children can go home and some family intervention is held? Yeah. So I think we need to follow up with the minister on these questions. Yes?
Yes, most definitely. So I think I do need to give the response to my trivia question. It was quite easy, and it was just the section that established the cabinet in the Constitution. The answer was section 69, and our winner was news commentator. So you can respond to the WhatsApp. I'm sure you're very familiar with the number by now. and we will reach out to you with your prize.
I see a comment here from Ken Youth Mullings. No, Ken Youth. The cabinet and governance is a governance issue and a politics thing that. So I want us to level up our thought process around these matters, because far too often we talk about politics. None of politics this in the partisan way that we may be using the word. It's a governance issue. So we have to level up our thought process a little bit, because otherwise taxpayer money, hold people accountable and so on. So please just change the tune a little bit. But tune in next week and we talk some more, Ken Youth. On your bone of contention, it seems. But no, it's not politics, this. All right?
Yes,
so,
thank you so much for joining us. I'm Jade Williams.
And I'm Mikkel Jackson. Have yourselves a great week.
Jamaicans, by justice, the people's champion. Justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, Jamaica demand. Right to life, right to liberty. Out of many, we are one in a Jamaica. Make it a better place for the boys and girls. Created equal by the creator. For equal rights and opportunities. No to unlawful detention and police brutalization. Class, gender, race or religion. We not tolerate discrimination.
To join the fight against injustice, contact us at 755-4524 or JamaicансForJustice.org.
The people's champion.
Looking for a gym that's got it all? Welcome to Express Fitness, where fitness meets